Some breaking news to bring you now. The rate of employment in the UK has risen to 4.8%. That's in the 3 months to August. That compares to 4.7% in the 3 months to July. That's come from the Office for National Statistics. So up 0.1 of a point. UK average regular earnings growth as well fell to 4.7% in the 3 months to August and was 0.9% higher after taking consumer prices index inflation into account from the ONS. Just so happens that the Housing Secretary, Steve Reed, has just joined me as well. So let's ask you about that. Good morning to you, by the way.
Good morning.
Unemployment on the rise, not a good look.
That's right. I mean, slightly higher than it was last month, but it was too high then in any case. And the reason that this government is going for growth with such determination is that it's only by growing the economy that we can create the jobs that people in this country need, and that we can give people the pay rise they were denied for a decade under the last government. So I'm out here today talking about how we want to increase house building. That's not just homes for people to rent and buy at prices they can afford, but it's construction jobs, engineering jobs, quantity surveying jobs all over the country that give people good, secure employment for the future. And that's what we need to see for the UK economy.
Are you going to build new homes and pay for that by taxing more expensive homes in the budget next month?
No, we're going to get more...
So no taxes on, no wealth taxes on higher value
Well, I know
properties.
I often get asked on these programmes what the budget's going to include, but
of course.
For one thing, I don't know because it's up to the Chancellor. And secondly, even if I did, it's not proper to come out and announce that in advance of the budget.
Interesting, because you will fly kites around certain policy ideas, and if they gain traction by getting us talking about them, then they miraculously appear in the budget. So you can't have it both ways.
Well, I mean, what I'm here to talk about is actual steps we are taking to grow the economy and deal with that issue with unemployment and wages that we know is a problem because it was one of the big factors in the general election last year. One of the reasons we're not getting homes built, which is closing down the opportunity for home ownership for so many people in this country, is that our planning system is far too slow and cumbersome. So we've got legislation going through Parliament right now to speed it up. But what I'm announcing today is further changes to that legislation will come into force just in a month's time to speed up house building. One example of that is currently councils block far too many of the applications that are coming through, and half of those are then overturned on appeal. If we got the councils approving them faster, instead of adding in that additional cost and delay, that's more homes faster for people to be able to buy. So we're going to change the law so that I, as Secretary of State, have the power to call in decisions where the council has unreasonably refused a proposal for new housing to go ahead.
Yeah, if this is a good idea now, why didn't you have this idea last July? Was your predecessor with the housing brief, Angela Rayner, asleep at the wheel?
Angela did an incredibly important job. Angela was responsible for the planning bill that's going through Parliament right now. I've taken over at the end of its journey to becoming legislation, and I'm just putting through a package of further reforms that will speed up house building, and I'll be making more changes in them in the weeks to come as well. I don't think we can ever just sit back and say job done. When you've got a planning system that is acting as a barrier to people's dream of home ownership, you have to tear those barriers down. But by barriers,
do you really mean Conservative reform councils? Is that what you're talking about here? They're getting in the way of what you want to do.
I'm not actually pointing the finger at any particular party. I think it's the process. So councils are far too likely to turn down an application for new housing. There was a case in Rochford, which is in Essex, where the council, that happened to be Conservative controlled, rejected a scheme for around 600 new homes. It was overturned on appeal, and in 2 years later, the homes started to be built. We could have brought that forward 2 years. That's people being able to get themselves through their own front door much faster. Why should we allow councils to take perverse decisions like that get overturned on appeal in any case? We have to speed up the system if we want spades in the ground, cranes in the sky, and people opening their own front door for the first time.
Talking planning decisions, should the government rubber stamp a new Chinese mega embassy? There's a decision due this time next week.
Of course, the government shouldn't rubber stamp any planning decision, and that will be a decision that will come on my desk. And of course, I can't talk about a specific application because I have to act in a quasi-judicial way in taking the decision.
Yeah, because there's a lot of talk that they've been given the heads up that it's going to happen. This is regardless of things on those plans that don't seem to tell us exactly what they're going to be building. Rooms underground that people don't know what are going to be useful.
You'll be aware I can't talk about a specific application, but there is definitely, in general terms, no predetermination of big decisions like that one. The information would be put on my desk for that decision or any other. I will then go through it very, very carefully and I will come to a view.
Is China a threat to national security, in your opinion?
China poses a threat to national security. We know that because we've seen the increase in cyber attacks on this country emanating from China. We know that there's a threat. That's one of the reasons why the government has increased spending on security by £600 million. We have to take that. We have to take that threat seriously, and we do.
If two people are facing then accusations of sharing information with a country that you say is a threat to our national security, why doesn't the Director of Public Prosecutions have what he needs to bring a case against them?
Well, there's 2 points here, aren't there? The first one is the national security point, which I've answered for you. Yes, we recognise it. China poses a threat, and we've taken action against that. Secondly, there are the details of this case. Now, the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, asked the government for evidence. It was provided to the CPS.
Yeah.
They then took the decision independently, without any minister being involved, that the case didn't meet the threshold for prosecution under the law as it stood at the time. Now, the law was subsequently strengthened. It was under the previous Conservative government. Had they strengthened the law...
This is the Official Secrets Act.
This is the Official Secrets Act, 1911. Had they changed the law earlier, then perhaps this case would have stood up in court. Because they didn't, then the case was not able to go ahead. And that's not my view. That was the independent CPS.
So two things. No ministers saw this, you say, but senior civil servants certainly did. And it sounds like the deputy to Jonathan Powell with the security advisory brief, Matthew Collins, is being... Well, it looks like he's being thrown under the bus. That's what some are saying. He's been scapegoated.
Nobody is alleging any fault on the part of that official. The official did what was asked of him, which was to provide evidence.
So let's see the evidence. Can you share the evidence with us?
Well, there are national security implications. You'll understand that. And if the government published that, then of course China and anyone else could get to see it as well. So of course we can't do that. But the official did the right thing, provided the evidence. The CPS took a decision, but they took the decision under the law as it was at the time. It was the Conservative Party that had failed to strengthen the law. So if the Conservatives want to throw mud around this, then I'm afraid it's going to hit them back in the face, because had the Tories acted earlier, they did eventually with Labour's support as well, had they acted earlier, perhaps this case would have succeeded. Yeah,
Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, and Alex Burkhardt is Shadow Duchy of Lancaster, I believe, they've written a letter to the Director of Public Prosecutions alleging exactly that. This is dragging on for you. They think they've got a bit of a Watergate moment going on.
No, it's not.
Why can't you put it to bed?
The Conservatives are keeping on throwing mud, but also not realising that the fault actually lies with them, because had they strengthened the law earlier, then this case would have stood up. It was actually the previous government that had failed to do that. Labour was in opposition. We couldn't have done it.
Regardless of what ministers did or didn't know, is it really right for Dan Jarvis to stand up at the dispatch box and blame journalists for asking questions?
Well, people were asking for transparency. I heard part of what Dan Jarvis was saying in the Commons yesterday. He provided the answers that he was asked about.
Yeah, but also said we shouldn't be asking the questions we're asking. And until there are satisfactory answers, and I appreciate there's a Secrets Act to follow here, but there's a whiff, or certainly people think there's a whiff of conspiracy here, and the legislation is being hidden behind when it comes to the government.
It's always a delight to answer journalists' questions. It's why we come on your shows, and we're happy to be here.
Let me ask you another one then, because this is a story in the Times today that a mosque banned female fun runners from taking part in a fun run in London in Victoria Park at the weekend. And they're being accused of breaking the law. This is the East London Mosque, which denies it broke the law. But nevertheless, there were male fun runners of all ages and females, but only under the age of 12. What do you think?
Well, I saw the report, so it just sounds inappropriate to me. We should not be banning women from taking part in fun runs in public parks in this country. I don't fully understand whether it did or didn't break the law. That would be for others to look at. It sounds absolutely wrong to me.
If that is the case, then, would action be taken against this mosque or any other that was banning women from taking part in an activity?
Well, we have an equalities watchdog, and I'm sure they'll be looking at this case, and if they're if there are problems with the way that the mosque has acted, then you would expect there will be an intervention with the mosque. But you can't have women barred from doing things in public that men are able to do. That just strikes me as absolutely wrong, and certainly isn't in line with the expectations British people would have.
Steve Reed, thank you very much.
My pleasure.